I didn't believe in a higher power. I believed in higher powers, right? I believed that I had, these gifts. I was highly sensitive. I could, I'm a medium. I can talk to the dead. And it just, I could sit there and I could appreciate the work that they were helping me with, but something was missing.
What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't, and we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hersh, and if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes. My guest today on Truth Tastes Funny is Jen Romanowski, aka Sunshine. She's a trailblazing psychic medium, soul healer, spiritual advisor, high priestess, Reiki Master, and a recovering alcoholic. She's known as the Sober Witch, and her mission is to help highly motivated witches in recovery rediscover their magic, align with their highest purpose, and live an abundant life promised in sobriety. So, well, first of all, welcome, Sunshine, to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast.
I'm so happy to be here, Hersh.
It's great to have you. And we were just talking about the fact that there aren't a lot of guests that have been on this program anyway who could identify themselves as someone who is a medium, able to share their story of recovery through witchcraft. That is not a common log line, theme line. So lead us off wherever you want to begin with that story.
No, I love that. I love that you state that, and kind of where we jumped into recording. I feel very blessed to be able to do this. I have identified as a witch myself since I was in my, mid-teens. I was raised Catholic. Something didn't feel right, and somehow or another, I found myself embracing witchcraft. And so most of my, teen life, my adult life, I, practiced. And, at some point, I had to admit that I was a recovering alcoholic. And, for anybody that's listening, if you've been around a 12-step program or been around a recovery program, they talk about a higher power. They talk about, it's a spiritual program. And as I sat, because I started in AA, as I sat at these tables and I would listen and I would talk to these people, something always felt really off to me, right? I didn't believe in a higher power. I believed in higher powers, right? I believed that I had, these gifts. I was highly sensitive. I could, I'm a medium. I can talk to the dead. And it just, I could sit there and I could appreciate the work that they were helping me with, but something was missing, something that would align to my beliefs, to my spiritual path, to my truth. And I knew from the very beginning, once the kind of cloud of the abuse of the alcohol kind of dissipated, I knew that if I wanted to stay in recovery, I knew if I wanted to change and transform my life, I had to embrace my spirituality, and I had to be true to what that meant to me. And I'm a witch.
Yeah, and I love the confidence with which you express that. And what it makes me really curious about is what is a witch and what is witchcraft, because I think we all have familiarity with the words, but I'm not sure if we really are clear on what it means.
I think if you were to talk to, pull 10 witches in a room, they're all going to give you a different definition, right? They're going to give you a different understanding.
So they're essentially rabbis.
Yeah, right.
That's my experience, is if you put 10 rabbis in a room, you're going to get 10 opinions. That was my upbringing.
Yeah, and so no, it's very, 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 very true. There'll be some flavors and some things that weave in that are similar to each of their, and there's some things that they're all going to kind of believe in. But the reality is everybody's going to have their own perspective. And I think that's the beautiful thing about being a witch and about witchcraft is it's truly up to you to define what it means to you. That's part of this, path that we're each individually on. But as an individual that's here to not just embrace my own witch, but to help other people awaken their witch, embrace their witch, I do have a philosophy of what I believe makes that up. And the very first thing is this belief in psychic abilities, the belief that we can leverage and use divination to be able to shape and move through our path in life. And that can look differently to folks. Some people may hear from spirit guides. Some people may talk to the dead, may connect with their ancestors. Some may just trust their inner self and their inner knowing, right? But we all, my belief is that a witch has this. We have this ability. We embrace it and we leverage and use it to navigate our life. That's a really big thing. The second is a belief and the practice of magic, right? It's not uncommon if you've heard of a witch, you're going to think of spells, you're going to think of hexes, you're going to think of curses, right? And at the end of the day, what this is our ability to know and understand the elements that make up the world around us and to be able to leverage and use those elements to bring about changes within our life or the life, the world around, right? So
Yeah.
this belief and practice of magic. And my third one is where I believe some people would, I think most would agree with that, right? My third, I believe that a witch is here to be of service to the world. That we have an obligation to be of service to the world. And it can be as simple as being a mother and raising their children and teaching them and helping them navigate life, right? That is a service to the world at large, create good other humans that are, operating this world. Or it could be as big and grandiose as creating an entire recovery program geared around witchcraft to allow other people to step into their best life, other witches to step into their best life, right? So I believe
Yeah.
those are the three things.
Yeah. And ultimately the what it really comes down to is a lot of connection to purpose, a lot of connection to being heart centered and caring about the world and caring about
Mhm.
bringing something to it.
Yeah.
It's just consciousness on a certain plane with certain abilities and powers. Uh, and it was interesting that the recovery program is for witches because initially I thought, oh, are you using witchcraft to help other people who are struggling with alcoholism, or is it
Mm.
only witches that are being helped? And how is
I
that
I
all worked?
love that you're asking that question, right? So ideally I've taken, I did the 12 steps. I did a 12-step program and I appreciated it. I appreciated its structure and I knew it's something that people would be familiar with, but it didn't align with all of the beliefs. So I deconstructed those 12 steps and applied kind of the beliefs and the philosophy of a witch to them, right? And so any individual that identifies as a witch can move forward through those steps, right? But I added a 13th. And if you've been in a 12 step or around a 12 step, you might know that there is a very ill definition of a 13th step, right? And
Okay.
around the tables in a 12-step program, they consider it a predatory step. They basically say that an old timer is going to prey upon a younger person in the program for their own benefits. Yeah, don't like
Okay.
it. Don't
Okay.
like it, right? 13 is a number that is very magical to a witch. There's a lot of people that find it has a very powering number. So I took that 13 and I created the 13th step, which is the act of using magic to help combat addiction in this world. So I, on a regular basis, do ritual, even my daily practice is to try to help raise the vibration of those around me, around the world, to be able to combat addiction and you know heal the world from the pain and suffering that it causes.
That's beautiful. And the two things that resonate with that are number one, taking the number 13, which people have generally, like the stigma that surrounds witchcraft and all of that is that there's some kind of nefarious purpose, dark purpose to all of it, bad luck, something you should avoid, a black cat, all that, all those things, which, I don't know if that comes from the Salem witch trials or from some kind of historical demonization of what we don't understand, or as basic as that, but it's become uh you know uh, part of the lexicon of popular culture, or historical elements that basically perceive these things as negative. But but I think the idea that someone could take that 13th step, see, the way you're describing it, someone might come to the program who isn't currently practicing witchcraft, but might discover it through their own recovery and then find it helpful in their new life as a recovering alcoholic. Is that possible?
It is, and I find that there's a handful of folks that do stumble across that are, they just feel like something's lacking, right? They feel they can recognize that there's something missing, and it resonates with them. So I started this back last year around each of the pagan holidays, is when I would host a community ritual. It's a free, and we basically do the 13th step together. And I've had strangers walk through those doors, and just this last for In Bulk, the beginning of February, I had a girl that walked in, said she happened across, stumbled across the event. I don't remember if it was on Facebook or Meetup or wherever she found it, and she had no experience with witchcraft at all. She was just compelled. She was called. She resonated with the message that was being shared, and knew she wanted to connect and find some type of community. And admitted she had literally drank a half of a fifth the night before, and was sitting there with us going through withdrawals that day, right? And you know, the reality is there are so many individuals that are struggling to step into recovery, let alone stay in recovery. So I don't care if you've had experience with witchcraft in the past, you've identified with it or not. If you're drawn to the program, if you're drawn to what I share, what I speak, or what I talk about, there's something there for you to take away. And I hope, and my prayer is that it keeps you on your path of recovery. But if it just gets you one step closer to staying at some point, I'm good with that too.
Yeah. Yeah, and so my experience with 12-step programs was that in 2009 I got a DUI, and I had to, attend meetings as part of the service, the deal, the whole thing. And I had a similar experience to what you had, which was I something was not like it. I appreciated it. I respected it. I saw it all as valuable. The whole thing was valuable. Thank God I went through that DUI experience, because I never drank and drove again. And I was a little fortunate, and nobody got hurt, and I didn't get injured, and all of that stuff is miraculous. And they said at the time, you drive drunk on average, 200 times before something happens, before you get a DUI, or something like that. People do it all day. They do it every day. They think they have it down, or whatever it is. And they could have a whole history of it before it ever happens. That's why I talk about it, because I feel like people have to know that, that the risk is there. They can be just a regular person who drinks too much, or drinks a little too much, and just always is driving a little bit over the line, a little bit too much when they shouldn't be. And that can happen on and on. Yeah, you wanted to.
No, I love that you talk about it and you don't hide it. One, shame can just lead you down a darker path, right? If you're
Yeah.
ashamed of what you've experienced. But some people don't realize though that it's not even it's not even having maybe even drank too much, right? People want to even assume that they can go ahead and just have one. And I have a very dear friend, he's crossed over at this point, but I remember I knew him when I was in my early 20s. He was just a smaller guy. He weighed about a buck 30, went out for, a business dinner. They ordered beers. He had one beer and blew over the limit.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, it's just not worth it. From that point forward, he lost his license. He lost the ability to be able to be insured on a vehicle. All right. Thousands of dollars of fees. He was going through a divorce at the time. So the ex threw that right at
Oh,
him,
yeah.
right? Lost the ability to actually have his children because he could no longer drive them. I mean, people don't think of it in that context of like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to grab a beer or a drink and it's just going to be one. And then I'm going to go after an hour and drive. Like people just don't realize the slippery slope that you're stepping into, right? God
Yeah.
forbid, uh, you know, he, something would have happened and his judgment wasn't good. I mean, he was pulled over, I think, for not signaling on a merge,
Yeah.
right? But it's just not worth it. It's not worth it. And I mean, have the conversation around alcohol and its impact on the world in general is a whole nother topic, but yeah, it's
It's a
just not worth
related
it.
it's a related topic. But I think that globally speaking, as human beings, we tend not to read the signs. We tend not to, and I don't mean even the signs that I have a problem or this is it's just we don't read the logical signs that are in front of us in life. So we take for granted things, or we think we're the exception, or we think that the rule doesn't apply, whatever it might be. And soon enough, those things rear their head, and we don't always have control over that. That's the thing. We have control over whether we get help for something or ask somebody for help with something. We don't have control over an accident. We don't have control over what happens in that situation. And so I think where we can exercise control, the better. The point I was actually going to touch on was the sitting in those meetings. And I went to different place every time, you know, just to see what they're like. And had one of them been a witchcraft meeting, one of your meetings, which it wouldn't have been at that time, that was in 2009 or whatever. Had it been a witchcraft meeting, I might have stuck with it and stayed in those meetings, just because it seems to me like uh very innovative, very thought provoking, which is what it should be. um and so talk about your work now. What is a typical day like for you now with what you're doing?
Um, Typical day. So I do some consulting for small entrepreneurs, right? So I do kind of weave a lot of that in folks that I believe in their own mission. I've got a background in product management, leadership, and operations. And so that's all weaved in. But from my stuff, right? I wake up in the morning, ritual happens every single morning. I pull my own tarot cards. I do my own reflection of the day before. I set my intentions for the day. I understand even astrologically kind of what's going on. I do that evaluation. And from there, a lot of the day is determined by, what the universe kind of guides and shapes that I should be doing, right? And I could look at a list of, don't get me wrong, I have to-do lists, but I could look at that to-do list and feel like nothing resonates in that day and ask, what do I need to shift? What do I need to change? And that's a beautiful thing. If you were to go back 6 years to the Jen that was still drinking, not the sunshine that sits in front of you, there is no way I would have deviated from that to-do list. No way. No, I say I'm a self-proclaimed recovering control freak as
Yeah.
well. But I spend time. I write to my audience. I may be compelled. Like earlier this morning, it wasn't on my list, but I heard you need to go live. You need to talk a bit in my Facebook group. I need to share some of the message around like what recovery is, because people, I'm a recovering alcoholic, so people are all like, "Oh, well, I don't drink," and I'm like, "But are you in recovery? Like, is there something that you are recovering from, something that wasn't serving you in your life that you've let go of and are trying to leave behind and trying to recover, right? The healthy mind space, a healthy spirit. Um, I lead the programming that I have. I lead 7 workshops every single month, and those are sprinkled throughout the month, depending upon the moon cycle, right? We're witches,
Yeah.
so we operate based upon the moon. Um, you know, I I've been writing a book, so a lot of my time has been, as I find a calendar day open, it's okay, I'm compelled. What can I edit? What can I write? What do I need to shift and what can I change? Uh, it's a beautiful thing, though, because my recovery has taught me that as long as I'm open, right, as long as I'm willing to listen, the universe is always going to guide me as to what I should be doing. And sometimes it can be dropping everything and going out and playing in the garden. And other times it can be, reaching out and finding out who I haven't heard from lately, right? That I know needs a kind word and a hello sent their way.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And what it all makes me think is because I've, in the past, so I don't know, let's just say the past week, I have between my interviews that I do on the show and also client work and other people, I've been engaged with healers, mediums, you know, generally very spiritual people. Um, and I'm wondering if, no pun intended, you see like a kindred spirit in people who are doing, quantum consciousness acceleration, for example, or someone who's doing energy healing.
Oh,
How does that work community wise?
I have a handful of folks that I am really, really close to, and we have these kind of conversations. And I'll go down a path that's kind of strange and weird for a second with this, right? I was raised Catholic, and so for any of your listeners, in the Christian belief, there is this belief that there's kind of this point of rapture, right, where we're all going to be called and, you know, a place of judgment, and it's a very harsh
Yeah.
view of that, right? But I have shared with a handful of folks, I believe we're in that place right now. And it's not in the way that I think a lot of the Christian and the religious concept of like, I believe that we are in the place that we are all being called to evolve to a higher level of consciousness. That
Yeah.
is what the rapture is. And it takes not just me, not just, 1 or 2 people that I talk to, but it takes every single individual that is out here doing the work and the flavor of their work to be able to change the paradigm and the consciousness of the collective, right? So that we're not in this like low vibrational state of pain and suffering. My flavor is to focus on witches, is to find people that identify as a witch and to help them transform their life into a beautiful life. Because if they do that, right, and they're embracing that philosophy that I laid out, then they're also going to be doing service to the world, right? That's my flavor of it. But I believe, yes, it is a kindred spirit with every other individual that has accepted their mission and their flavor in their way to walk a path that leaves footprints that make the world better with every one of them.
That's an interesting topic too, the rapture in terms of this moment in time. Uh, there is no doubt that anybody, I don't think you could talk to anybody in the world right now, honestly, who wouldn't identify with that in some way and say,
Mm.
yeah, it's shit's weird. Like I don't know that anybody wouldn't think there's weird stuff going on. And it doesn't have to be uh cosmic in its in its definition. But people are feeling weird. There's weird stuff going on. There's shifts happening uh, politically and humanistically that are indicative of some new level of awareness. So another person that I talked to um, has very if you listen to my the interview this week, Monica Bermudez, who was my guest on this week's Truth Tastes Funny episode, and is not only a healer but also speaks very intelligently about extraterrestrial life and presence on Earth. Um, and my interview with her was before the drone sightings and all this stuff in New
Mhm.
Jersey and all. My interview with her was before that, or we would have talked about it. But the week later that happened, and I communicated with her, and I was like, "What is this?" Because she was saying we're going to become more aware as a society, as a species, of the presence of star family, as she refers to them, and saying this is not, this is something that's going to just be more visible, palpable, uh, and that fits in with all these other things that are going on. What do you feel, since your audience right now that we're speaking to are people who largely are curious about solutions for a chaotic world, curious about ways we can survive and thrive in a topsy-turvy world. Um, as we come to the conclusion of the interview, can you what would be a, first of all, where can people find you? But after you share that, share a thought, if you would, about how you perceive this moment in time and what your prescription would be for it.
Mm. Yeah, if you want to reach out to me, you can always. I love dropping my email, sunshine@sunshinereadings.com. It's usually pretty easy. You can always find me on the website. I'm sure Hersh will
We'll
have
have
all of the
everything. Yeah.
links. Yeah, please. I love to hear from folks, and it's always a delight. It doesn't matter where. I'm on social media, Facebook, Instagram. You can pretty much find me anywhere. And, if I had to kind of give a prescription, the thing that comes into mind, and I usually, when I get asked these questions, I allow spirit to give me what I need to share in this moment. Get off of social media. Like, no joke, right? If you truly, truly want to thrive in this world, get off of the internet, get off of social media. I'm not saying don't use it as a tool, but stop the doom scrolling, stop, consuming your media from that, and go out and talk to people. Connect with people, engage with people, right? That's how we are going to make a change, thrive, feel good, find out about ourselves. There is, if you happen to be a TV person, there's a television series called Evil, and it talks about literally evil in this world. And there's a particular episode that's popping into my mind right now that's talking about how evil, or the concept of evil, they talk about it in a demon type of fashion, but the concept of evil exists in these algorithms, right? And the reality is, when you are consuming media in that fashion, you actually aren't choosing what you see,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
So the only way that you can get the truth, right? You say the truth tastes funny. The only way you can get the truth is by engaging with and interacting with actual human beings or extraterrestrials. I don't care if that's your flavor too, but right? Engaging with another being that isn't connected directly to media. So yeah, that's what they told me to share. So
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.